7 years ago was the first time I started talking about this topic without even knowing that health coaching was a profession that existed. And it was at my children's preschool PTA meeting. And you wouldn't believe how many eyes were rolled at me. And 7 years later, after becoming a health coach and working with many moms and seeing what's going on in our world, this topic is still fiery in my heart. And I don't care how many eyes will be rolled at me, I will be fine. But if I don't keep talking about this, our kids won't be fine. So I will keep working on changing the way things are looked at to awaken families so we can stop the for-profit corporations from poisoning our kids and take charge and be the leaders of our children's health. Today's message is not about feeding your kids perfectly. It's not about avoiding all sugar or processed food. It's not about getting your children to see sugar or processed food as villains. It's not about adding more to your already long to-do list. It's about empowering your children to enjoy eating well without feeling forced, making balanced choices even when you're not around, grow up to be healthy, nourished, happy adults, and to enjoy their childhood with some of the treats without sabotaging their health, and focusing on choosing unprocessed foods as much as possible to avoid falling in the addictive trap. Now I have some bad news and good news. Which one do you want first?
Bad.
Okay. So current reality, this really breaks my heart, and I'm sorry to start with this, but sometimes we have to see where we are to take the right action steps. According to the New England Journal of Medicine, for the first time in human history, our children are expected to have shorter lifespans than their parents due to diet and lifestyle-related diseases. We are the most obese and most now malnourished at the same time. That just tells you that calories are not, they don't mean you're feeding yourself. And Americans live 8 fewer years than people in Japan and Switzerland, and life expectancy is going down. 60% of adults, American adults and children, suffer from chronic disease, and 50 years ago that rate was 1%. 74% of American adults are obese, and 50% of teens are now obese. This is 3% in Japan. 1 in 34 children has autism, and that rate used to be 1 in 10,000 50 years ago. 50% of Americans have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, and 1 in 3 children who walks into your pediatrician's office has either diabetes or prediabetes, and that used to happen once in a 40-year career of a doctor 50 years ago. 18% of teens have fatty liver disease, which in 1950s only affected late-stage elderly alcoholics. And there's a 67% increase in ADHD diagnosis in children and adolescents between the years 1997 and 2016. There's more, and this is the last one, I promise. Young adult cancer rates are up by 79%. 1 in 4 American women are on antidepressants. 40% of teens have a mental health diagnosis. 15% of high schoolers are on Adderall. 500,000 American children are on SSRIs. No other country has this rate. And sperm count in teens are 50% less of what they were 2 generations ago. American puberty rates are also 6 years earlier than what it was in 1950s. Our country has the earliest puberty rates of any continent in the world. The bitter truth is, for each additional serving of ultra-processed food we eat, early mortality increases by 18%. This now makes up 67 to 70% of the foods our kids are eating. Now, for the striking part, this is amazing to me. 82% of independently funded studies show harm from processed food, while 93% industry-sponsored studies show no harm. This is where we need to wake up. And this is where we need to take charge, because it is not what they tell us it is. And we have to, just be responsible for ourselves. 95% of the people who created the USDA food guidelines had significant conflicts of interest with the food industry. And 75% of the FDA funding doesn't come from taxpayers, it comes from pharma. 1970s, 1980s, the tobacco industry said, okay, we can't sell cigarettes. Everybody knows nicotine kills, or cigarettes kill. And then they purchased all the big food companies and deployed their thousands of scientists who are experts in addiction to make our food more addictive with ingredients that didn't exist 100 years ago, that humans are not biologically adapted to eat, and FDA approves while having conflicts of interest. Another thing that I want to share that Mark Hyman said is food is not just calories. We have to stop worrying about calories. Don't even teach your kids about calories. They don't matter. Food is information. Food is medicine. It really literally speaks to each one of our cells. It's not about weight. They're the building blocks of our bodies, and it creates the blueprint for the rest of our lives. I mean, if we were building a building, we know that if you're using styrofoam, it will collapse, and if you use bricks, it won't. Same thing with food. Like, it's very linear logic, which is somehow we were made to forget by these industries. And it's very easy to get busy in our daily life and not think about this, but this is not a normal reality that we live in. It's time to get united as parents and be the leaders to change the trajectory of our children's future health. It's time to care. Feeding our kids mainly ultra-processed foods, it's not that much different to exposing them to secondhand smoke all the time or raising them next to a toxic waste plant.